Hey everyone, and welcome back to This Explainer. Today we are meticulously breaking down the complete, chronological unraveling of a teacher's lies right in the middle of a police interrogation. We're looking at a deeply disturbing case out of East Texas, and we're going to rely entirely on the raw transcript and the actual timeline of the suspect's interaction with detectives. Honestly, what we're about to go through is a literal masterclass in psychological maneuvering by law enforcement, paired with just a stunning, almost unbelievable display of denial by the suspect. We've got to start with this exact quote because it brilliantly illustrates the massive psychological dissonance of the person we're analyzing today. Listen to these words. "I am just too open, and I'm just too trusting and too nice." This is Annalee Andrews. She's a 26-year-old educator, and this is how she's describing her absolutely inappropriate relationship with a 15-year-old student to the police. As we go through this explainer, I want you to keep asking yourself, how does someone arrive at this profound level of detachment from reality?
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this confession. First, the hallway confrontation. Then, the interrogation and shifting stories. Third, blaming the victim. Fourth, the arrest and aftermath. And finally, a controversial sentence.
Section 1. The hallway confrontation. Let's set the scene. Our explainer kicks off at a middle school down in East Texas, where 26-year-old teacher Annalee Andrews is suddenly, without warning, intercepted by police right there in the hallway.
Now, this confrontation didn't just happen out of thin air. Weeks prior to this, an assistant principal had been alerted to some highly inappropriate Snapchat messages between Andrews and the student. Days before the police actually show up, Andrews abruptly resigns from her teaching position, telling everyone she's going to volunteer overseas on Mercy ships, and then boom, the day of the confrontation, she's intercepted. I mean, think about that timing. She had just resigned and was actively planning to flee overseas right at the exact moment screenshots of her digital messaging surfaced.
You really have to notice the jarring contrast here between her casual, almost dismissive demeanor and the severe reality of the evidence the detectives actually have in their pockets. When the police approach her, she acts like it's just a minor scheduling inconvenience. She literally tells them she's a little busy and preparing for her big overseas trip. But the reality? Detectives already possess hard Snapchat evidence showing the student discussing buying marijuana and the two of them referring to each other intimately as babe and baby. It's like she's living in a parallel universe.
Section 2. Interrogation and shifting stories. Moving into the formal interrogation, they sit down in a quiet room, and this is where the psychological cat-and-mouse game truly initiates.
To understand what happens next, we need to quickly talk about rapport building. It's a classic interrogation technique used to keep a suspect calm, build a sense of false trust, and essentially minimize the perceived severity of a crime, to extract a confession. The detective explicitly tells Andrews she isn't under arrest and that they really just need her cooperation, remorse, and honesty to, quote, open up so many doors.
Just listen to the detective's words. We all make mistakes. What people can't accept is when confronted with a mistake, not owning up to it. The detective is systematically minimizing her felony actions as just a mere mistake. He even compares it to a kid getting caught with their hand in a cookie jar. It is such a calculated move to quietly spring the trap and make a confession feel like the safest possible option for her.
So the absolutely crucial point here is how fast this psychological pressure forces her story to shift. Initially, Andrews plays it completely innocent, claiming, "We just talked and I didn't think anything of it." But the detective gently pushes. He assures her they just need to know she isn't some horrible monster. Well, under that perfectly guided pressure, she completely changes her tune, eventually admitting that 3 separate sexual events occurred. Actually, it's wild. It's a staggering pivot from a harmless chat to freely admitting to multiple felonies.
Section 3. Blaming the victim. As the truth spills out into the open, we start to see a deeply disturbing psychological pivot, where she actively attempts to deflect the responsibility.
I mean, check this out. Notice how she attempts to cast the 15-year-old child as the mastermind of these encounters. She claims he's a smooth talker. He knows how to speak to an attractive young woman. I didn't even know why I was there. Remember, she is the adult here. She is in a position of authority, yet she's trying to frame herself as this naive victim being manipulated by a middle schooler. It's wild.
The detective then systematically pins down the locations of these meetups to really lock in her timeline. It starts with her picking him up at the victim's own house. Then it escalates to hanging out at a public park. And ultimately, it culminates at a vacant family property in Star, Texas. She had free access to this vacant house because her family owned it. And this is exactly where the physical boundaries were completely shattered.
It is genuinely chilling to hear her describe pizza and ping pong while actively confessing to severe felony-level crimes. When the detective asks what they did at that vacant house, she super casually lists off having a mini picnic and talking about life right before admitting to the sexual acts. It perfectly highlights her incredible failure to grasp the legal and moral gravity of the situation she's in.
Section 4. The arrest and aftermath. This is where the clinical, undeniable reality of the justice system finally shatters her casual illusion of just walking away. After detailing the property to the police, and incredibly, literally driving out to show the detectives the vacant house in person, she finally tells her mother what is going on. Her mother's only advice, upon learning the horrific truth, is stark and incredibly simple. Do the right thing. It's this sobering moment of realization that she absolutely cannot run from this anymore. Tracing the rapid succession of events here, we see that her cooperation immediately leads to her swift arrest the very next day. On day 1 in the afternoon, she's showing detectives the vacant property. By day 1 evening, she's confessing to her mother. And then, on day 2, the rapport building is completely over. She is called outside her home and officially arrested on multiple felony warrants.
Her mother is actually present during the arrest, and her final, stark statement at the jail highlights the abrupt end to Andrew's whole grand plan for an overseas escape. Her mom just tells her, "Wherever they put you tonight, just go ahead and try to sleep. I'm not going to try to figure that out, it's late." The fantasy of flying away to volunteer is replaced instantly by the harsh, cold reality of processing into a county jail.
Section 5. A controversial sentence. Which brings us to the final unraveling of this case, a conclusion that left the community, and honestly, the very prosecutors who fought the case, completely stunned. Take a look at the massive, devastating weight of the 12 initial felony charges brought against her. 3 counts of improper relationship, 3 counts of sexual assault, 3 counts of trafficking, and 3 counts of enticing a child. Based on her own admissions and the digital evidence, the state threw an absolute mountain of severe legal trouble at her. The book was literally thrown.
But in 2025, despite being found guilty of 7 of those severe charges by a judge, this single digit represents the total number of years she was sentenced to prison. Yep, you heard that right, 2 years. It's an incredibly low number compared to the absolute severity of the 12 initial felony indictments we just talked about. Now, factoring in her 3 months of credit for time already served in the county jail, her most permanent consequence by far is her lifetime status on the sex offender registry. She will serve a fraction of time behind bars, but for sure, she will carry that registry status for the rest of her natural life.
I am just going to let the district attorney's completely outraged final statement speak for itself regarding the lightness of the sentence. For context, it is incredibly rare for a DA to publicly condemn a judge's ruling like this. But the DA firmly stated that the 2-year sentence utterly failed to reflect the seriousness of her crimes, her ultimate betrayal as an educator, and the permanent harm inflicted on a 15-year-old victim. So, we're going to leave you with this final provocative thought about how our justice system measures the betrayal of trust and the protection of students. Does a 2-year sentence adequately reflect the unraveling of a teacher who systematically abused her position? I mean, think about the psychological manipulation, the rapidly shifting stories we track today, and the lifelong impact on the student. It's a complex, deeply unsettling question. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll see you next time.